Today, we get another reminder that your marksmanship skills from significant distances as a private citizen can be the difference between life and death. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's research-informed defensive lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I'm your host, John Correa.
And I'm your co-host, Neil Widener. Today's video comes to us from São Miguel, Brazil.
To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below.
Two guys in the bottom right just chilling. Watch the motorcycle come from the top left here, and it's got two guys on it who want the death of the guy in the white shirt. So they're going to jump off the bike and get after him. Gun is already out. Our guy in the white shirt decides to run off, and the guy in red, watch him, and this is important because he's an off-duty cop. So he's going to get to a safe place, turn around, draw his gun, chamber it, and absolutely destroy the first bad guy there. Run out after the second bad guy. Now, this one's filmed on a potato, but watch our original guy who is the subject of the assassination attempt fall down. Guy's going to run over and unfortunately end his life. Now, our guy in the red shirt, again, filmed in a potato, comes to the middle of the street, and they exchange some shots. Neither of them hit a darn thing here. Going to see our guy in the red shirt, our defender, run off a little bit. Our guy comes back to our intended victim, makes sure that his job is done there. Then he is going to run back to his motorcycle and take off. Go read the news stories that I've linked in the description. Police have not found this second accomplice. Not only did one bad guy die, our intended victim die, but an uninvolved 19-year-old bystander died in this one as well. Gosh, you know, Neil, we see these lessons show up again and again and again, and yet an awful lot of firearms trainers that I know, they go, well, you know, gunfights are 3 shots at 3 yards in 3 seconds. Why do you think that myth persists?
You know, I had a conversation about that in a class this weekend, and I really think it's, it turned into some sort of thing that, well, the FBI says, and I've looked, I don't see anything where the FBI ever said that, but it just turned into this myth that just grew legs and took off, and we ignore the actual evidence that we've got, such as this one here today. And so I think in a lot of classes, we just don't teach that, and a lot of people don't go to the range. They don't like shooting at 25 because they're not good at it, so they like to do what they're good at.
Let's think about it in the lessons. So I guess we got to start this one, Neil, talking about the fact that we almost never do assassination attempts here on Active Self-Protection, you know, because that lesson is, you know, do your best to stay out of stuff that will get you targeted for assassination, right? You know, eat your vegetables, stay in school, don't do drugs, kids. And I know that sounds a little trite to say, but for the average kind of general person like you and me, you know, solving your conflicts with words and not getting into these kinds of situations is plan A.
Again, we talk about the averages a whole lot. So it's not necessarily always going to be somebody that ate their vegetables and stayed in school, but it's very rare that it's that. It's somebody that's involved in something with some shady people, with some shady organization, or whatever the case may be, that gets a target on their back. And if that's who you are and what you do, something like this shouldn't be completely unexpected.
Also, if you do have something like this, and it may not be his fault, you know what I mean? This may just be some unhinged guy who decides to target him. If you know you've got those kind of things coming, I love that he's sitting with his back to the wall and he can kind of see, but you do notice that he's on his mobile, right? So he is kind of distracted. If you're doing that, just paying attention to your world. Remember, attention buys you time buys you options, and you can pay attention and be curious of your world without being paranoid and without, you know, always being a cat on a hot tin roof. Because unfortunately, our guy here really only recognizes that something is amiss, that there is a problem, when it is already right in his lap. Because the guy shows up and has a gun already out on him. And I do really like here, Neil, that at the very least, he didn't just sit there and go, oh no, what am I going to do? He saw the problem, oriented to the problem, and then decided to at least run. And is that the best solution? Well, heck, I wish he was armed. I wish he could have gotten his own gun out, maybe get behind the truck after the first couple shots and get back after these guys. But doing something is better than doing nothing.
Yeah, the thing that we always talk about is that you have to rapidly and radically accept the situation you're in, and he did. It appears that he was not armed at all. So, of course, jumping up and running is probably the only option he's got. And like you say, if he is armed, he could have got behind that and returned fire. But he has to run to safety, and maybe potentially he was potentially he was shot 2 or 3 times on the way past the pickup, so he's already diminished. And then when he gets across the street, he runs out of gas, and he's got no cover. He's got no safety.
Yeah, we're going to get there in a little bit more in a minute, but recognize doing something is better than doing nothing, and having kind of a plan already in place, like, hey, I know what my skills are. I know what my equipment is. I know what I've got available to me. Really, really important. Because again, if he'd have seen these guys when they're coming up the road, recognize, man, that guy's got a gun in his hand. That gives him some more options. Now I can get up, draw my gun, and get after these guys and at least be in a 50-50 rather than in something like this that he is really at risk. Now watch our guy in red. Our guy in red here, they don't even really see him. They're so focused on their target, but he has to run off like crazy. Now, why does he have to run off so much? We know he's armed, but if you look, he gets his gun out when he gets out to a place of safety. And based on his movements here, I'm 99.9% certain that what he had to do was chamber his firearm. So why did he have to get way out of the problem in order to get his gun in the fight? Because he knew he had to start his gunfight with a malfunction clearance. He had to start his gunfight by getting his gun out and in the fight. And that was going to take him so long that if the bad guys saw him, they were going to get after him first. And so this is a good reminder to carry your firearm chambered if at all possible, because that time that changes what capabilities you have and changes the timing of your gunfight and made this a lot harder for this guy.
It really did, John. And the thing to think about is that it doesn't matter how fast you are when you've got 2 guns in your face, standing up and trying to get a quick draw to first shot puts you at real risk. So I really admire the idea of getting out of the danger zone, getting backwards behind the attackers, where the attackers' focus is somewhere else. But he had to run an extra 5 or 6 steps to stop at that cover and then chamber his gun. Probably wasted a full second, if not maybe a little bit more, where he could have been in the fight a whole lot quicker and could have potentially put rounds on target faster. So again, having one in the chamber and understanding the differences in time is a big deal, and it really affected us here.
Yeah, and knowing, again, if you're going to carry a firearm unchambered, you assume that you have the second hand available. You assume that you will chamber it correctly, that you won't cause a malfunction in the gun when you're doing that. It's a lot of assumptions. He got it out here, but recognize it took him extra time to do that and changed his tactics. Now, once he gets his gun in the fight, I want to note a couple things. First of all, this shot that he had to take is about 15 yards. He took maybe 10 yards. He took a good solid 10 steps to get out there. But why did he get a hit? If you notice, when he finally gets his gun up and in the fight, he has 2 hands on the gun. He has the gun up at eye level, which tells me, at least in some significant way, that he is using his sights. So he is standing and delivering. And what we see in real gunfights all the time is that in the mortal world, if you're not like an A-class USPSA shooter, and if you're not shooting USPSA or something equivalent to that and have that actual qualification, have that you're actually classified that, then you're not. Simple as that. What we see actually work for people is standing and delivering with a good 2-handed grip. And he's got to get good, accurate shots on target at 10 yards. And this is why when we teach firearms training classes, Neil, this is generally what we teach people to do, is stand 2 hands on the gun and deliver, because you want to put accurate shots on target. Exactly.
Because, there's some stuff out there that would indicate that a lot more firearm firefights are with one-handed shooting. We just don't see it. And when we do see the one-handed shooting, we see much lower performance. So if we can get 2 hands on the gun, if we can focus enough to do that and then see our sights, we see things like this happen where, the other thing that I see is that, the first shot did alter our bad guy to some degree. You see, he's kind of stood up and arched his back. So he's already changed the behavior. But then follow-up shots are important, and you can't do follow-up shots one-handed near as well as you can with 2. So he's able to keep 2 hands on the gun. He was able to follow up with another shot, and about a half a second later is kind of my guesstimation that ended that guy, so that he could go out and attempt to save his friend or the person that he was sitting there with.
Yeah, he clearly had to deal with the threat that was closest to him before he could do that. And here's where I want to see that. You watch that guy, he put the first shot in him, and now our good guy in red is firing his second shot. It's about a 0.55 split is what that was, about 0.55 seconds. Now, at 10 yards or so that he is, that's not a rocket fast split. It's not a super slow one either. But notice what happens. That first shot instigated fibs in the bad guy. Remember fibs, fudge, I've been shot. If you want to insert a more colorful F word there, you may. That fudge, I've been shot. It says, man, wait a minute. I'm not thinking about what I'm doing right now. I'm thinking about what just happened to me. And this is why we say the first one to put an anatomically significant hit on the other guy, the first one to put a shot in the meaty bits almost always wins because of this. And so that first accurate shot really, really matters because of the fibs factor. And so that's why, is it cool to be able to do rocket fast splits? Sure. I mean, don't get me wrong. A fast build drill is a good thing, but accuracy and getting that first shot in him and then following up when I know my sights are on target, really, really important.
It really is. And the other side of this is that, I think this guy had an opportunity, our guy in red had an opportunity. Again, if he's carrying with one in the chamber, he could have made those shots much easier by not having to create so much distance. And I kind of get why he did. I'm not judging here because in the moment he did what he had to do based on the information that he had. But we can learn some lessons from this, that there were other cars to duck behind for cover earlier. So he went past the first car over behind, and maybe even past the second car, kind of tucked in by that van back there before he got turned around and into the fight. Probably added, at least 5 yards, if not 7 or 10 yards to the shot that he had to make. And then also to think about the fibs factor did not immediately take that guy completely out of the fight. The guy was still up. He is still a threat. So you have to stay engaged in that target that is a threat, the closest one to you, until it is no longer a threat. And on his second shot, that's exactly what had happened. But had he read his shot and realized I hit this guy, now I can move on, he's still in danger. So I really like what he did up to this point with a couple of notes that, I would have liked to have seen him run a little bit less to get in that fight, but he got in the fight, he stayed in the fight, he ended that one threat so he could continue on.
Yeah, it's another myth that I hear sometimes too. Somebody says, man, if you shoot somebody that's more than 7 yards away, you're going to prison because that's not self-defense. Here's one we see very clearly, 10 yards or longer, that is clearly self-defense. Not about where you shoot somebody. By the way, it's about why. This guy's trying to kill my best friend and he is shooting at him. So shooting him in the back, completely justified. It's not about where you shoot somebody. It's about why. Now you notice his third shot here. Second shot put our bad guy down and put him down pretty hard. So the third shot breaks, that guy is moving. That's the reality of things. That happens. And human performance and the way that the human body responds to stimulus, you can't always keep that third shot from breaking. This is a little caveat here, and one of the reasons that I do like a pistol mounted optic, because it keeps me target focused. It keeps me focused on what the threat is doing rather than having my visual plane back at my front sight, which is the way most people are taught today. So yeah, you can shoot your irons target focused as well. And I'm not saying irons are bad, okay? But I do think, adapting to modern quality pistol mounted optics is a benefit here, Neil.
It really is. It gives you that opportunity to stay focused on everything. But John, I'm going to give him a pass on that third shot in that, he was in an active shooting with multiple shooters that he had to deal with. And potentially in his mind, what he read was this guy going to his knees to reassess, and maybe didn't recognize that he had delivered the shot that he needed to already. So he was going to deliver one more just to be on the safe side. And like you say, human performance comes into play because we've got to focus. We've got to have enough time that our brain can recognize what happened there. So in a half a second, that's a lot of data to process. And so from my perspective, I thought that third shot was coming probably because the guy was going to his knees, to turn around and potentially shoot back. So I give him a complete pass on that. He had a good backstop, and the way everything was happening in the moment, I think that third shot was an okay one. But at the end of the day, the fourth one is what I feel like was one that was wasted. And then anything potentially after he went off screen.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely justified. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not trying to say that this was not a justified shot. It's totally 100% okay. And I understand why he'd do it, because he's responding to the stimulus that happened a half second ago is what he's doing. So it takes that long to program an action, make it happen. So totally okay. Again, keep watching what's going on. Now watch him with this next shot. And why? So he doesn't get any hits on the next guy. And that guy is like all the way across the street at this point. He is a long way across the street. He's probably 25 yards or so. And why is our guy not getting hits here? He got at least 2 good hits on the guy who just went down because he stood and delivered. Now, instead, he's running towards his buddy. Man, I give him mad props for that. Moving into the threat is incredibly brave, but he's not getting hits. And so A, he's wasting ammo that he only has so much on him. And B, he's not ending the threat. And why is that? It's because he's running. He's running towards that threat. And I think getting hits at 25 yards while you're running on a moving target, I don't even know that a USPSA Grandmaster is going to make those shots with reliability, Neil.
Most of them are not. Now, some of them are, and I know some that can, you know what I mean? But these are the best shooters in the world that are doing that. I'm guessing that an off-duty cop that's sitting having his lunch like this probably isn't one of the best shooters in the world. Now, we can't count on that. But at the end of the day, when you're running and shooting, it is really difficult to get shots where you want. And again, that's another thing that we work on in some classes. Most people just haven't ever got to do that. They go to ranges where it's not allowed or whatever. But if you really want to test that, find a place that'll allow you to do it and try that. It's very difficult to get shots on target. And John, you said 25 yards. I'd guess he's probably closer to 35 yards at that point across the street over there. So that makes that target a tiny little target, and you're shooting with irons. That's a really difficult shot. So part of why they move the way they do in like IDPA and USPSA is to get to shots that they can make. And if you can't recognize that these are not shots I can make, then then make a different decision. Potentially now, again, I want to give this guy a break because I think he's the hero of the story, that he did his best. And there was a failure there, a big failure because somebody lost their life. But potentially he's just throwing rounds down there to get this guy out on the street to slow down. But again, you've got to think of your backstop. You've got to think of others that are around. And you know what happened? A 19-year-old, bystander died in all of this. And as far as I could tell in the story, I couldn't tell what rounds hit that guy. But running around shooting willy-nilly, trying to, even if you're calling it suppressive fire, has consequences. And in this one, it did.
It did have consequences. And again, I agree with you, Neil. I don't want to give this guy too hard a time. He's the hero of the story. I mean, this guy has, how is he running so fast with the giant balls he has to carry around with him? I don't know. What we're trying to do is we're trying to give some technique guidance here, some things to think about. You get that in classes. Come to the ASP Skills Summit, right? Come to our training classes or get in a great class otherwise, okay? So even if it's not an ASP class, that's great too. Now listen, I know this is filmed on a potato, and I apologize for that. It's the best resolution I could find. Is that you see here, our victim has run off, but he's run out of steam. And at some point, you may not be able to run off any further. And I don't know if he was already mortally wounded, but I'll bet you if you could go back here and say, I wish I was carrying my gun. And I just don't ever want to end up meeting Jesus on a day and him going, where was your gun, John? That would be the worst to me. And recognizing, all right, not everybody can. This is in Brazil, very difficult for citizens to carry firearms. But, we're talking to our American audience here. The vast majority of the population is, protected constitutionally to carry a firearm. And so I just think it's the best idea on earth to make sure your firearm is on you all the time, because you don't get to pick the day you need it.
You absolutely do not get a pick, especially if you're the good guy in the scenario. That the bad guy picks everything, and these guys had a good attack plan. They came in fast, and if you watch that in full speed as that bike came rolling into the room there, they had less than a second to see that react and do anything. So standing and fighting was not a great option. They had to scatter and get to some cover. But if you don't have your gun on you, when you do get to some cover, you're still sitting there alone, just waiting for them. And if they are a determined attacker, they're going to come do what we saw here. And I'll bet that guy was laying there behind that telephone pole or whatever it is, just wishing that he had a gun. So when this guy comes running across the street, at least I have a fighting chance. And unfortunately, he just didn't in this one. And so let's learn that lesson that, if we carry a gun because we might need it that day. And if we're going to say, I'm going to a safe place, I'm not going to carry today. That's when these things kick off. And that's what we hear from people over and over and over that weren't carrying their guns. Well, I just thought I was going someplace safe and I didn't need it today. Well, clearly this guy needed it today.
Look at the difference in effectiveness between our victim and our defender. And the start of that is, the number one aspect to win a gunfight is carry a gun. I don't even care. I wouldn't have recommended it like a 5-shot snubby for this particular gunfight, but even that would have been better than nothing. because now our guy is running up and just our bad guy has decided that his day is over, and that's the way that is. And we only talk about this from time to time here at Active Self Protection, but we talk about spiritual fitness from time to time to make sure that you're ready to meet your maker, okay? So that you've lived a good, sane, sober, moral, prudent life, that you've made a difference in your community. And of course, from the perspective of the perp, right? Being an assassin is not it, fam. That's not going to do it well for you. There was a bad guy who went and met his maker here, who he was actively fomenting an assassination in that moment. And you do not want to meet your maker in the middle of murder. Like, you just don't, right? Now, from the other guy's perspective, I don't know what he was involved in, but again, at the same time, you want to make sure you've said everything you need to say to your loved ones and that you and Jesus have a strong relationship, because you might need it. And I don't know if the bystander on the right is the one who ended up passing away as well, Neil. But even as a bystander, right, you may get caught in the crossfire. So practicing spiritual fitness, super important.
It really is, and I don't know the process if you even get to meet your maker when you're the bad guy in this kind of scenario. If you already don't have a relationship, potentially you don't even get to meet your maker. You just get to go where it's really, really warm. And so I think having a relationship with a spiritual relationship with and you get to choose who you want to worship. I know who I am. But at the end of the day, these are decisions that when we walk out the door, make sure that you've said what you need to say to your loved ones at the very least. And if you don't want to be spiritual, that's totally up to you. But you have people you love, you have people that care about you, have the right conversations with them. Don't walk out the door angry at somebody with something unsaid, because that might be your day. And it's a horrible tragedy to have to be a 19-year-old kid walking down the street with your whole life ahead of you, and some asshole did what they did that day and took it all away. So when it's all said and done, say what you need to say, guys.
Yeah, still some gunfighting stuff for us to talk about here, because Red Shirt comes out. Again, filmed on a potato, kind of hard to see. But you notice here, when he starts firing, he keeps firing. And once the bad guy recognizes him, he starts firing back at our good guy. So now we have what I would call a 50-50. Who's better at this? And of course, as a good person, you don't want to close distance on a guy who's shooting at you. You just don't. That's not what you want to do. You want to put this guy down hard. And I would call this distance here, it's hard to estimate, but I would call this a good 20 yards, maybe even 25. So again, how's your marksmanship skills? Because you don't want to go into this gunfight going, gosh, I wish I had my more capable gun on me. Gosh, I wish I had practiced and I was capable of doing this. You want to go in there going, I am better at this than you are, and I know I can get hits from this distance, and you probably can't, and I'm going to end this fight right now.
Yeah, this is not the day to be carrying that easy gun that's really easy to conceal but hard to shoot, or that little tiny one, or whatever the case may be. This is the day to carry the gun that you perform the best with, and every day is the day to carry the gun that you perform the best with. And I get it. You're going to say that that's my rifle. No, you can't carry your rifle around. Well, in some states you can, but I wouldn't recommend it. But carry the pistol that you can perform the best with. And like John says, at 25, 30 yards, this is a long shot. And these are hard to do. You've already been under some significant pressure. But the thing that we saw with this guy was when he stood and delivered inside the building, he put a pretty good shot on his target, where here he is moving. And part of that is going to be affected by the fact that he's out in the middle of the street. So now he's got traffic behind him. He's got shots coming from downrange and all of that kind of stuff. So he's got to keep moving. But if you can stop, stand, and deliver, you're going to be better off, because if you can just prove to yourself by going to the range, through your practice, through your dry fire, that I am better than most folks out there, then I'm going to stand and deliver even while he's doing this. I may end this threat and I might save my friend's life. I might not, but at least I'm going to give it my best effort.
Yeah. Again, and this is my thing from me to you. And I hear this from time to time from people. They're like, well, John, the little J-frame snubby that I carry in my pocket is better than the 45 that I leave at home, or the big gun that I leave at home. I agree with you in that rule number one of winning a gunfight is have a gun. But that snubby is going to be like super duper expert mode for this, because you've only got 5 shots, and you might say, well, I have a reload. How long is it going to take you to reload that snubby in real life? Long time. You really have what's in the gun. Okay. So I want a gun with enough capacity to deal with my problem, including 2 bad guys trying to murder my buddy, and that I can shoot at significant distance. And I got to carry that gun every day, because I don't know the day that I am going to need it. Right. Which is why I carry 17+1 and an optics equipped pistol that I know I can shoot well, and I know I can get hits out to about 60 or 70 yards and do so relatively quickly. You can go over to Active Self Protection Extra and see us doing that on a pretty regular basis. Not that that's an everyday problem, but it's one that again, this is kind of the extreme edge. Once you're good in that 3 to 7 yard range, which you should be very good at as a concealed carrier, you should get good in that range and then work those distances out so that you have capabilities on that worst case day. And this is that worst case day. Now, unfortunately, then our good guy does have to kind of beg off because he's in a 50-50 and he doesn't want to get killed. I don't blame him for that. And now our bad guy is going to then instead just ignore his buddy. There's no honor among thieves, and he is going to get away. Now, listen, at its core, as our guy in the red shirt, our mission is to break contact with a deadly threat. And he did his best, but his buddy isn't going to make it, probably wasn't going to make it regardless of his ability to do that. And so I don't blame him for that. I think our red shirt guy is an absolute hero, did his best, tried his hardest. I think, though, this is a great reminder for me, Neil, that, you know, our skill set really matters, and our ability to get hits at those extreme distances can really be the difference between life and death. And this is why we do practice some of this.
Well, this is why we have classes, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of great instructors across the country, around the globe, that can help you with these kind of things. And if you're the kind of person that's sitting there saying, well, I can make that if it needs to, or that'll never happen to me, then potentially you're not being honest with yourself. And so if we are going to cover our ass, we've got to do the work so when the day comes, we can.